So today we're going to talk about real estate investor blind spots. Now this is a two-part series and we're going to talk about item number one that most people aren't thinking about. Stay tuned. Now before we go any further, if you guys want more blind spots, then I'm going to need you to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell because I'm trying to get over 300,000 subscribers and I'm growing slowly. So please, 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 if you help me with that, I'll help you do more videos. So first, what are blind spots? So obviously, people that have blind spots don't even know they have blind spots. So I'll give you a quick personal story. When I was a young man, I brought a 130 unit to my uncle. And at the time, he was in his 60s and he had a lot of wisdom and a lot of experience. And I, of course, was a scrapping entrepreneur trying to buy real estate. He very politely sat me down and annihilated my business plan because, of course, at that time, I had a lot of blind spots. I didn't know what I didn't know. And he very kindly showed me how much I didn't know. So what are some blind spots? Number one, going it alone. A lot of people do this. They don't have a team. They don't even take input because they are the smartest ones. Be careful of these people. Be careful of investing with these people. Number two, the I know it attitude. Be careful of these people because of course you can't talk to them about anything. They know everything. They're not taking more information in and they are closed-minded. Number three, they blame others. So when things go wrong, they point outward as opposed to inward. Be very careful of those people who are not solving problems for you. That's what entrepreneurs do. They solve problems. They don't blame other people. Number four, they avoid difficult conversations, and we're about to have one. They avoid them because they're afraid of the consequences of talking about those things, and then they might not have all the answers or be the smartest person in the room. Number five, and least talked about, is just being good as opposed to great. There's a great book about this, but just tolerating just being good enough. In other words, they're okay with the results instead of being anal about the results and finding the best people they can to help them through the tough times. These are blind spots that I had when I first started in the industry. So the first blind spot is rent growth or price growth. And you see this a lot where people are projecting what happened last year to next year without being realistic with other market conditions. And of course, they can make any pro forma perform however they want based on these two things. The second blind spot is vacancy, and we see this all the time. The lower the vacancy, the more the income. You have to be realistic on the vacancy factor specifically with turnover vacancy. The third blind spot, of course, is expense projections, and we're seeing property taxes go up, insurance go up, labor go up, supplies go up, marketing costs go up, energy and utility costs go up. All these things are going up, so if you're not budgeting this correctly, your numbers are going to be off. The fourth blind spot are stabilized interest rates, and as we know, the Fed just raised 0.75%. The federal fund rate, and they're about ready to raise it again. So these really matter in your overall cash flow. The fifth are the exit cap rates, and we're going to talk about that in video 2. So I'm going to wait on these. The sixth blind spot, and what most real estate investors do not pay attention to, is debt service coverage, or DSC. This is a very important one, and we're going to go into this next. So blind spot number one, which is number 6 on the list, is debt service coverage ratio. And this is very important because your lender looks at this. So no matter what you've been doing on your property, no matter what value you've created on your property, your lender is always looking at the debt service coverage ratio to see how much money they'll give you on a cash out refinance. So your debt service coverage ratio is defined as the ratio of cash available to service the debt. That's all it is. It doesn't get any more complicated than that. In other words, it's a metric used to determine the amount of cash you have available to pay both the principal and interest payments of your loan. So what's an example of a good debt service coverage ratio? So most business lenders require the borrowers to have a debt service coverage ratio higher than 1. In fact, the minimum for most lenders is typically around 1.25%, but today, in the environment we're in right now with interest rates and the fluctuation going on with real estate, we're actually seeing as high as a 1.35%, but more on that later. So a debt service coverage ratio of 1 means that the cash flow generated from the property in question will be exactly enough to service the borrower's loan. Obviously, the lender's not going to want just 1 1-to-1 cash flow to service the debt. What they do is they build a cushion in there, and a debt coverage ratio of 1.25 means that the borrower will be able to service their loan with some added cushion or 25% more for a cushion. So in this case, you can see the lender wants a 25% cushion, and in a 1.35% debt coverage ratio, they want a 35% cushion. Now let me show you how important this is and why I think it's the #1 blind spot that's gonna hurt a lot of real estate investors. So this is your typical real estate deal. We'll just call it a 100-unit multifamily value add deal. Pretty simple, $10 million, 70% loan, 30% equity, $1 million renovation with the $400,000 NOI, which is income minus expenses. Pretty straightforward. Interest rates, let's say last year, not very long ago, 6 months, we're at 3% with a cap rate of about 4%. 4% into 400,000 is a $10 million price. And of course, the debt payment is around $210,000, which of course is just simple interest. So I understand this is interest only, but I'm trying to teach here. So 3% of 7 million is $210,000 in a debt payment. So now you have a $400,000 NOI, a $210,000 debt payment, which means that you have about $190,000 of cash flow. Not a bad deal. That's somewhere between a 6% and a 7% cash on cash. All you do is take the $190,000 of cash flow and you divide it into your equity, and that's how you get your ratio. This is not a bad deal as it sits right here. Additionally, you get this value add component, and we're just going to assume that this property has about $125 per unit rent lift or some kind of NOI growth to be able to make this a value add property. 100 units times $125 times 12 months is about $150,000 NOI growth. It's that simple. So all things being equal, you take your $150,000, you add it to the $400,000 which existed when you bought the property, and you now have a $550,000 NOI just through this value add strategy. This, of course, is where a lot of real estate investors and a lot of real estate syndicators are right now. However, but in 2021, rates were around 3%. So when you did this deal, it's going to take a couple years to get this NOI growth. Your rates were around 3%. Now, what you projected in your interest rate is very, very important. And my guess is you didn't project a 6% interest rate or double what it was just 2 years ago. So how does this impact you today? So most people are probably very happy that they were able to grow the NOI from 400 to 550,000. This, by all terms, is a very good value add. However, we now have to struggle with this 6% rate, which is what you would pay if you did a cash out refinance. So most lenders right now are looking at about a 1.35% debt service coverage ratio. If you're lucky, you might get a 1.25%. So this is all you do now. You take the 550 and you divide it by the 135, and you come up with a maximum payment that the lender is willing to do for you of $407,000. So again, let me walk you through that. You take your 550 NOI, the lender's going to look at that as their source of payment, and they're going to lend at a 1.35 debt service coverage ratio, which equates to about a $407,000 payment annually. As you can see, the difference here is cushion for the lender. The difference between the NOI at 550 and the 407 is cushion for the lender. Now I'm about ready to really blow your mind. So now you got to take the 6% rate of today, divide that into your new debt service payment, and you actually get a maximum loan amount of about $6.8 million. So you merely take the 6%, divide it in the 407, and you can see this is how lenders determine how much to lend. They start with the payment, then they back into the loan based on the current rate. Now, there are other factors here like reserves for taxes, reserves for insurance, reserves for CapEx, reserves for interest rates, those kinds of things that can actually make this even worse. However, for simplicity reasons, I'm trying to show you how debt service coverage ratios and interest rates can severely impact what you're going to be able to get from a refi as looked at by the lender. So hopefully you've all spotted the problem. The problem is that the $6.8 million loan does not even come close to paying off the original loan. So therefore, you actually don't have a refi opportunity here for two reasons. One, the debt service coverage ratio went up, and two, the interest rates have gone up. So what you have here is a property that's cash flowing $150,000 more per year, and that's good. But what you do not have here is a cash out refi opportunity. So if your original deal was based on a cash out refi opportunity, this, I believe, is blind spot number one. So some of you might be thinking, but I'm at 550 at a Y. Haven't I grown my value? The answer is yes, of course, depending on what your new cap rate is, which is video number 2. So what happens if your debt coverage ratio goes to 1.25? Then of course your payment goes to 440, which is good. But then you take that divided by 6% and you have a loan proceeds of 7.3 million. And of course the original loan was 7. So you really still probably don't have a cash out refi, even with the debt coverage ratio going from 1.35 to 1.25. But this, I believe, is enemy number one for real estate investors, blind spot number one. So hopefully you guys all see the importance of debt service coverage ratio. If you want to see the next video, please hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell, because I plan on delivering that in 1 week.